This one we've heard from earlier in the interview, John Miller with Julian. I invite John Miller to join me on the stage. I get to interview him for a couple of questions, and then we're going to give him a bulldog. John, we don't have a whole lot of people inducted into the Hall of Fame who are not athletes. But your career and the fact that you started learning your broadcasting here at College of San Mateo makes a very special place for you. And I know everyone here that's involved with the athletic program is very proud to say that John Miller was a College of San Mateo student, learned broadcasting here at College of San Mateo. And we don't have one person in the audience to stand up to put a punctuation mark on your career, because everyone could. We've all heard you on the radio, watched you on television, National Game of the Week, play-by-play for the Giants. One of the things that stands out in my mind that sets you apart from so many other people in the announcing world, and the fact is, a person in the announcing world is an entertainer. You don't have a big ego. You're not doing it to shine a light on you. You shine a light on America's pastime game. You go to the ballpark every day with a tremendous attitude of bringing color and excitement and friendship through your voice and your description of the game. And I think people feel so close to you that your voice and your reassurance, the Giants may lose today, but we have a good chance to win tomorrow. I have faith that if you were doing a broadcast for Bloomberg Radio and the stock market went down about 2,000 points in one day, you'd be able to reassure America that, don't worry, we're going to have a comeback. John Miller, you're special, and from the bottom of my heart, I just love to listen to you and hear those descriptions. So tell us something about your early years here in the broadcasting program at College of San Mateo.
Well, thanks for the kind comments, and congratulations to everybody who has gone into the Hall of Fame here tonight. It was great hearing your stories. Great seeing coaches like John Noche and Bill Dickey, and some of my favorites from the time I was here, way back in the olden days. I really came here, I grew up in Hayward, and I went to Hayward High School. I was supposed to go to Chabot College. In those days, you had to go to the college that was where you lived. But CSM had an FM radio station, and CSM had a UHF television station on the air. And I heard guys doing football games while I was still in high school, the CSM Bulldogs. And I thought, well, I want to get on that station. I want to go to that school where they had the station, and I found out that I could. So I was 17 years old, starting college in September 1969, and I went down to the basement of the library where KCSM Radio was and KCSM TV, and I found out that Dan Odom was the guy to talk to down there. He and another gentleman, Doug Montgomery, had kind of really started the whole broadcast department down here. So I just want to introduce Dan Odom, who's here tonight, and I'm thrilled to have him here because he was so important to me as a kid. So Dan, thanks for coming, and I'd like to give Dan Odom a nice round of applause. Now, I went down to say, hey, I'm a student here. I'm 17 years old. I didn't say I was 17. But I was just a kid. I was a baby. I didn't know anything. But I wanted to get into the department. When you start school here, you don't immediately get into the broadcast courses. You're supposed to take all these other courses and whatnot. So I thought, well, I'm going to go down and introduce myself, and maybe I can volunteer for something. So Dan told me, Saturday we're doing the first football game of the year, and the guys could use a guy to do statistics for them. Would you be interested in that? I was like, oh, are you kidding? I'm a great statistician. So A guy named Mike Hegem, who is a sports writer here in the Peninsula, and a sports editor, and a former student. He was doing the play-by-play with another guy who was a stockbroker who'd also been a student here. And I did the stats, and I was all excited about it. And at halftime, Mike Hegem said, hey, John, would you come on the air and give those halftime stats? I said, are you kidding? I'll be great at it. So I gave the stats at halftime, and then when the game was over, Mike said, hey, you did really well at halftime. You want to do it again? Give the final stats. Are you kidding? And I was born to do this. And so I gave the final stats again, and then the next week, they were very happy, and they said, can you do it all again? So I did this and came on at halftime, had my little bit, and then post-game, and I was really excited. First time I'd ever been on the air. And Dan Odom and Mike Hegem had a little conversation. And they said, you know, he's actually, this Miller kid, he's actually a student here now. He should be doing these games because obviously he knows what he's doing. And which was really cool because I didn't even have to tell him, oh yeah, I'm really good. He actually thought I was really good. So Dan Odom thought, well, we can't just hand him this thing. And he asked me to come into his office with a tape recorder and sit in front of a television monitor of a football game, and he wanted me to do play-by-play of that football game as an audition to see if I should be put on the CSM Bulldog radio network. And so I did and I think I was getting pretty excited because I said, wow, this is, I might get on the air doing the football. So they scored a touchdown, and I started shouting and and there was a class going on, you know, in the classroom right outside his office. So after a few minutes of this, he kind of popped through the door and says, I think that's, we've heard all we need to hear, so Saturday you're doing the game with you and Mike Hegem, and that'll be it. So, so there it was, and that was such a big deal for me because I had been doing games on tape, going to the Oakland Coliseum when the A's came out in '68, to Candlestick Park for Giants games, sitting out in the bleachers, and just sitting in a spot by myself, broadcasting the game into a tape recorder. People sitting around me like, what is he doing? And in high school, at Hayward High School, I would sit at the scorer's table and broadcast the games into a tape recorder, and the next morning, I would play the top highlights of the game on the room-to-room intercom. You know, the president of the school would give lead everybody in the Pledge of Allegiance, and then they say, the Hayward Farmers had a big football game last night. John Miller with a report, and I'd give the report on the game, and I'd play my little highlight from my play-by-play. And so I used to play Stratomatic baseball. I don't know if you've ever heard of Stratomatic baseball, but as a kid, and I had kind of a warped childhood, you know, while Julian and all you athletes were actually out playing the games, I would play the games, and then the rest of the time I was playing make-believe games and broadcasting them. And I think even then, as a kid, I understood that probably that was my best chance, not to be a big football star or baseball hero, but probably to be a broadcaster. And I loved the broadcasts. But it was a weird thing because I would be broadcasting the Stratomatic baseball, and if you walked in on me, there I was rolling these dice and saying, there's a base hit. I was doing the play-by-play. I was doing the crowd noise. I would be the public address. The right fielder, number 9, Roger Maris. Number 9. And then I was the organist. So I remember we bought a new house in the Hayward Hills and moved up into the hills, and my mother would show her friends around. They'd come over to see the new house, and they'd walk into my room, and there I was going, base hit! And her friend would always say, what's he doing? And my mother was a very quick thinker, and she'd say, asthma. He knows how to handle it. He'll be fine. So that is the backdrop. All of a sudden, I'm at CSM, and I'm actually on the air doing the games. And it was Dan Odom who sort of opened that door for me, and I've always appreciated that. The first game we did, and we had like a van that I know you have this big new Fred Bear press box now, but in those days we had a van. They rolled the van up to the top of the seats, opened up the doors in the van, we sat in the van, and we broadcast the game from there, from the van. And I'm doing the game, and the idea that you could have a spotter, I didn't know about spotters, because I'm doing my first football game with Mike Hagan. So I'm watching I have my glasses, and I'm watching the plays, and I'm looking at my roster to see who made the tackle and who caught the pass and so on and so forth. And I would say, and I was caught by number 12, Mike Churko, and he got about a 7-yard gain to the 43-yard line. And I was going along, and at halftime, Dan Odom says, if you don't mind, because I think you're doing really well, and I'm so excited and so proud of what you're doing. But on radio, you don't really need to say the number of the guy. And looking back at it now, I think I realized it just gave me an extra couple of seconds before I could actually find the guy's name to give. So I was number 11, Julian Edelman, or Edleman, sorry, yeah. But he gave me that tip, and it was my first game, and you weren't a sportscaster per se, but he knew that was probably something that, an affectation I needed to lose. So I got valuable feedback right away. I wasn't a great student here because I was really only here to be on KCSM to broadcast the games. That's all I wanted to do. And they had a great baseball team, a great baseball coach, John Nochi. And it was hard to do those games, the baseball game. We had a card table that we set up right behind the backstop. All the players could hear us. There weren't big crowds there. There's some scouts and, a couple of maybe the mothers and whatever, some brothers, sisters. So they could hear everything we said. You had to be careful of what you said. Wow, he looked terrible on that pitch. What was he swinging at, But I always remember there were the great former players would be there scouting the Bulldogs, because the Bulldogs were always good. And one of them was named who's the guy I'm thinking of, John? Come on. Yeah, played for the Brooklyn Dodgers. Yeah, Dolph Camilli, there we go. Dolph Camilli was there. And I would interview him during the game because I was so excited. Wow, this is like a great, and he was a great player. Now he's scouting. So I would interview him during the games and whatnot. But always one of my favorite baseball stories, and that's baseball. Football is exciting. You got you're the play-by-play guy. You say, Edelman caught a great pass. He picked up 18 yards to the 49-yard line, first down. Then the color commentator comes on, and he fills the time until they're ready to snap the ball again. Baseball, you have to have stories. Sometimes there's a lot of action. A lot of times it just kind of moves along very languidly. And you try to make the thing entertaining no matter what's going on. But one of my favorite stories involved Dolph Camilli, who, looking back as a 17, 18-year-old, I'm interviewing Dolph Camilli at these games. And he was a star player for the Brooklyn Dodgers, played at Ebbets Field. And the Ebbets Field used to have a public address announcer named Tex Rickard. Tex Rickard was from Brooklyn. How he got the nickname Tex is a great mystery, because he had a deep Brooklyn accent. And the Duke Snyder would come up and say, batting in the number 3 position for Brooklyn, number 4, Duke Snyder, center field. Thank yous. So they go to Tex Rickard one day. They say, Tex, when a player leaves the game, we're going to find out what happened, if he got injured or he's sick or whatever, and we'll send you a note, and we want you to announce that to the crowd. It'll be a service to the crowd. So that very day, Dolph Camilli's got the flu, and he has one at bat, and they take him out of the game, and he's throwing up, and he's having a terrible time. So he comes on. He's going to give this information to the crowd. Ladies and gentlemen, for Brooklyn, Dolph Camilli had to leave the game 'cause he don't feel good. Thank yous. And I asked him, and he said, no, I didn't feel good. Anyway, I always look back to you. I'm so thrilled that you were here tonight with your wife, Linda, and my daughter, Misha, is here. My wife couldn't be here. She has flu-like symptoms. And and my friend Klaus Larak, who is a great yoga instructor in Half Moon Bay. His wife, Amanda, she's not my Sherpa, but she's a great massage therapist and can work out the kinks better than anybody. So great to have you guys here tonight. In yoga, there's a move that usually it's the end of the session called Shavasana. And if you've done yoga, you know Shavasana, which is also known as the corpse pose. And Klaus said, I wasn't that good at all the other poses, but I'm the best he'd ever seen at the corpse pose. So to say I'm not an athlete, not quite correct. Anyway, it was great to be here tonight, and I'm very excited to hear from our next honoree, and great to see all the inductees here tonight. Congratulations on all the hard work and the recognition here tonight. You earned it. Thanks very much.
John Miller.